Hey, what's going on? JD here, and we are back with the Nike SuperRep Cycle shoes, a cycle shoe kind of developed more or less for spin bikes and going to the gym versus road cycling or anything like that. If you watch the introduction video where I unboxed these and installed the Look Delta cleats, I will have gone through a fair few things. I have over 1,000 kilometers on these guys now over the last couple months. So I'm just going to share sort of a midterm review of these shoes, what I have found, what I like, what I don't like, as well as if you're here, we're going to install some SPD cleats to these shoes because I am switching up the pedals. So we're going to take off the Look Delta cleats and try something different for the second half of this shoe's life. So we're just going to jump right into it. I'm going to talk about it. If you're just here for the cleat install, we've marked that so you can just jump straight to that. But in the meantime, we are going to grab a 4mm Allen key and we're going to take off these Look Delta cleats. So I will tell you right off the hop that, things were going good for quite a while, and then I got this horrible actual cleat noise with the Look Delta cleats. It took me a while to diagnose it. I did the normal things like normal. You would take the dry lube, and you would spray the cleat in order for there not to be friction so there wasn't squeaking. That wasn't the source of the squeak. I took out all the bolts, and when we get these out, I probably still see it. They might be a little bit greasy. I greased all the bolts, retightened it, had better luck with that. It was the left shoe, and that seemed to solve the problem. Even though I did grease the bolts initially for whatever reason, there seemed to be some friction between the plate that holds it in and, of course, the cleat itself. So we've got that first cleat off. So from what I could tell, there was, some play in there, and it's still a bit greasy in there between the bolt and the retaining clip, and that's what happened. You can see, they've sat there relatively well. It's all good. It's what kind of I expected. I don't see really any kind of hardware on the sole. So they have stood up well. And this is a good view of what I will say is the best part, I think, of these shoes is they've got some great venting down here, and they've got great venting throughout the shoes. For those of you who have ridden other bicycle shoes or even the Peloton shoes, if that's what you're into, will know that in hot climates that these things actually get quite hot. And I find you can ride in these, and they are quite cool. Now, one of my concerns initially when I got the shoes and we did the unboxing was the fact that we didn't have a full plate on the sole, and that it wouldn't be stiff enough. And that is kind of the case. These shoes are not super stiff. So if you have ridden any kind of serious biking shoe with a big carbon, sort of sole and shank, you are going to find that ultimately it is probably not going to be stiff enough for you. And I've got that quite tight. I did tighten these with a torque wrench to make sure that I was between 4 and 5 Newton meters, just to make sure that, like I said, this was the shoe that was having the issue and making the noise. So I wanted to make sure that I diagnosed it properly. And that's the thing with, biking as a whole. These things like cleat noises do happen, pedal squeaks, crank, bottom bracket, all that kind of stuff. Regular maintenance is important. It isn't just you attach the cleats once and then you'll never have to, do it again or anything like that. I am a person that I'm not a big fan of Loctite, and you can see that, I've got some dry lube there as well. Utilize that to try to deaden the squeak as well. So we'll just kind of wipe that off with the thumb. So that was kind of the first thing, is that, number one, there is a big degree of flex in there, and you can see it. when I just kind of push. So when you are doing sprints, and it is making a little bit of noise, creaky noise there as well. When you do things like sprint or get out of the saddle, you are going to notice it. Again, if you have a regular biking shoe with a stiff carbon, sort of one piece flat and shank, you're going to notice a big difference. So that's one thing to note. But again, it's these are great. Like I said, I got these because I wanted something a bit cooler. The mesh works great. This is a nice, cool ride. You don't have the overheat issues on your feet. They are extremely comfortable. They are probably by far one of the most comfortable shoes that I have ever worn. And it's great for that. But again, if you are a beast on the bike and you are powering through stuff, you're probably going to enjoy a stiffer sole. I know for road biking that I enjoy a nice stiff sole. So we're going to pull out the insoles here, and you can see those are all, again, nice and vented. And if we take a look in, I don't know if the camera can capture this or if it's too dark or what the deal is. You know what? I've got a flashlight here. I'm just going to shine that in there, and hopefully we can see. You can see that the insole here, if it isn't too bright, is that there is a bunch of vents sort of in there. It's great. It is great for keeping you nice and cool. But again, the sacrifice there is the stiffness of the shoe itself, and these are not the most stiff shoe. I'm going to pull out the insert here and get this cleat out, and I'm going to do the same with the other side. So the other thing that I've seen mentioned quite a few times is, number one, is that these fit small in comparison to shoes. And I can honestly say that I wear a Nike shoe size 10, and in the case of these cycling shoes, these are also 10 and they fit me perfectly. Are they loose? No. Are they tight? Yes. Do you want to go a half size up? Maybe. It really depends. But, for me, I always like my cycle shoes to be a tight fit. You don't want a lot of movement in there because you don't want the friction. Sitting on a Peloton for half an hour, 20 minutes, it might not be as big a deal if your cycling shoe is a little bit loose. But you are definitely going to notice if you start, pounding out hour, 2 hour, 3 hour, 4 hour rides. And you're definitely going to notice it if they are an ill-fitting shoe. So we're going to install SPD Cleats. Of course, it's a different system. They are much smaller. This comes from the mountain bike world. So that is the cleat itself. And we're going to install that. Of course, there are 2 bolts for each of them, and there is this little sort of clip here where, it sits on top, and you can basically screw it down to your shoe. The thing to note is that there is a little bit of a bevel, and what you want is that bevel facing outwards because you want the screws to seat nice and flush in there when you are installing your cleats. So as far as positioning goes, it's just like any other, sort of cleat system. You want them, sort of at the, the ball of your feet. You want them, you don't want them too high up on your toes because you're putting down all of that pressure. We're just going to rip it open like that. And we're going to get these out. These are the SPD receivers. So there you go. And what we're going to do is, because we had a problem with the, we're going to always make sure to lube this up. So if you're going to lube your shoes, and again, I do not recommend using Loctite. It's just me. I would rather check them and tighten them. It's just a part of regular bike maintenance on thing. But we're going to use some Park Tool Polylube 1000. It is basically a bearing grease, so you can use this to, lubricate your bearings for your pedals and all sorts of stuff. So we're going to utilize that. You can buy this in a tube. I'll leave a link down below. You do not have to buy a 1 pound container of it. This will last you forever. But let's get back to the cleat installation. So again, we're going to take the cleats, we're going to flip these up, and we are going to position them right where the ball of my feet would typically lie, and I know I'm going to be about there, so slightly above that. It's kind of a weird thing how these go. I kind of like to, get them in position. I would rather have a hand and hold the shoe, but in this case, I think we're just going to drop the bolts in, and I'm going to do something that I said I was going to do. So I'm going to have to put this down because we're jumping ahead. That's the great thing about doing video, folks, is that at some point you are going to forget a step because you're too busy trying to talk and you're focusing on a couple things. So we're just going to take a little daub of grease, and we are going to put that grease on the threads. What that's going to do is, if you happen to be riding outside, not that you're going to do that on your Peloton bike, is that it's going to prevent it from seizing up. It's also going to help, stop it from loosening, believe it or not. But at the end of the day, it's going to stop those creaks from happening. So we've got one lubed up, and then we've got the other, and that should be good. And then, of course, we are going to get the receiver, throw it into the shoe. My hands get stuck down in there. And we're going to place it, like I said, right where the ball of my feet should be. I'm going to take the clip. We're going to make sure that the point is pointing forward. There is a nice arrow there by Shimano to show it. We're going to put the recess up to ensure that those bolts sit nice and flush, and we're going to drop in the bolts, and we're just going to quickly hand tighten the first little bit, and then we are going to drop it in, and we are going to hopefully hit that second hole and hand tighten it a little bit. You just want to get it started because you do not want to cross thread your bolts, obviously. And we are going to tighten that down to the point where we've got it straight ahead. I'm just going to position it as I would my road cleats. And you can see you can move it a little bit left, a little bit right. I'm just going to leave it centered for now. I think that is a decent position for myself. And I'm going to get that down, crank it down. And again, you can go in here with a torque wrench. You can tighten it to 4 to 5 Newton meters, and that will get you sort of that perfect tension. Or you can just kind of do it by hand and just little quarter turns as you get to the end, just to make sure you're not over tightening and get there, because the worst thing that you want to do, although I will say this with the Nike cleats, because you do put a receiver in there, that you're not going to completely ruin a set of shoes by ruining that. You can probably pick those up, or Nike would send you another pair if you do happen to strip them out, but you don't want to do that anyways. So there we go. We've got the foam insert that we're going to put back in. That's just going to hold that cleat in place, and then if we're stepping down on it, we're not going in the big hole there. And there you go. So that's it. That is how you install the SPD cleats. For those of you who are new to cycling, there you go. That is the Look Delta cleat. They are quite different. Ultimately, I do prefer to ride on the bigger cleats. I like, the surface area, the power distribution, all those kind of things. If I were mountain biking, I'm definitely going to go with the SPD cleat. The reason being is that usually the pedals have a receiver on both sides, so it's easier to clip in. That's kind of the advantage of them. But you can see quite small, quite easy to deal with. The reason I'm putting them on is I have installed a pair of Shimano pedals that have flats on one side and SPD on the other. You can check out the channel and see that review. But there you go. That's how you install the cleats on the Nike SuperCycle shoes, or SuperRep cycling shoes, I should say. Again, if you really want to know my opinion, it's, would I buy these again? would I spend, in that price point, and they are $160 Canadian, would I spend that money again on these shoes after riding them? I absolutely would. I wouldn't necessarily buy them if I was going to ride them on a road bike. But for a Peloton in the studio where I am not trying to set any sprint or climb records or anything like that, and I'm not putting, huge amount of power into the pedals, I would definitely recommend these. Like I said, they are extremely comfortable. They feel good. They are extremely breathable. The major, flaw I will say is that, it's that flex, especially if you have ridden stiff shoes before. You are probably not going to like that. As I mentioned, sizing wise, a lot of people have indicated that they have gone, sort of up a step. I would recommend, if any at all, a half size. If you wear Nike shoes and sort of where you are in their line. For me, again, I wear a 10. I wear a 10 in these. It was a perfect fit, so I have no complaints. They've been quite durable. I have no complaints. The Velcro is still great. It has been really good, other than the one issue with the left shoe with the cleat. And like I said, that was easily resolved with some dry lube as well as greasing the bolts. These have been great. And yes, I would buy them again, just to utilize on the Peloton at home. So that's basically it. That's how you install the SPD cleats. That is my midterm review. I will have a long-term review once I have, ridden some kilometers here on the SPD cleats and let you know how things are. Remember to like, comment, subscribe, share this video, hit that bell button so you get notifications. If you have any questions, please do ask them down in the comments below. I am more than happy to answer them. And until next time, see ya.